Welcome to a podcast inspired by the YouTube channel ClimbUp Podcast, where we explore topics on personal growth and finding meaning in life. Okay, welcome to this deep dive. We're jumping right into some source material you've shared, and it's all about tackling those tasks that just, feel hard. You know, the ones that, things you want to do, maybe you even need to do, but you hit this wall inside, there's a whole list of excuses.
Yeah, and that feeling like it's just too much.
Exactly, too much.
And that resistance, it's incredibly common. The material we're looking at really gets to the heart of why that happens. It suggests our brain, it has this tendency to avoid effort, almost sees it like pain.
Right, like it's wired for comfort, wants the easy path.
Basically, yeah. Conserve energy.
But the really fascinating part, I think, from the sources is that we're not just stuck with that programming. We can actually learn to work around it. Or, as the material says, kind of trick our brain using specific techniques.
Exactly. And these aren't just, vague ideas. The sources pull from motivational figures. They touch on the science behind it.
Yeah.
They present really practical tools, things you can actually use.
Okay, so our mission here in this deep dive is to really pull out the most useful methods, the key insights from this material. We want to help you take those tasks that feel huge and just shift how your brain sees them. Make them feel more manageable.
Less intimidating.
Yes, less intimidating.
And the sources lay out some really clever strategies. We'll look at things like simple countdowns, breaking tasks down into really small pieces.
Oh, yeah.
And even using your imagination, visualization.
Okay, let's dig into that first bit then. Why does our brain resist? The source uses a pretty good analogy, doesn't it?
It does. It sort of describes the brain like a spoiled kid, always defaulting to ease, to comfort, wants to dodge anything that takes real effort or feels like pain.
Huh. A spoiled kid, I can see that.
That drive for the path of least resistance, that's the basic hurdle we're up against.
So when a tough task pops up, that spoiled kid part of the brain just wants to, run away or throw a tantrum?
Pretty much, yeah. So how do we start overriding that?
Right. What does the material suggest?
Well, the sources offer a few methods. The first one they talk about is the 5-second rule. This comes from Mel Robbins, the motivational speaker.
Okay, the 5-second rule. How does the source explain how that actually works?
The core idea is actually incredibly simple. The moment you feel that impulse or you make the decision to do something, you have to interrupt your brain before it talks you out of it.
Interrupt the excuses.
Right. You count down from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then, this is critical, you must move physically or mentally towards the task.
So it's like creating this tiny launch window. You sort of bypass the overthinking, the analysis paralysis before it even gets going.
Exactly. You use the counting to just propel yourself into action before your brain builds that wall of no.
You catch it off guard.
That's how the source puts it, yeah. Totally catches your brain off guard. It's a physical trigger that overrides the mental hesitation, forces you to act on that first impulse instead of letting the doubt flood in. It's less about thinking, really, and more about just momentum.
That makes sense. You're kind of short-circuiting that resistance loop. Okay, what's the next tool the sources mention?
Then the material gets into the task breakdown technique. This one's really for those huge, overwhelming tasks. The one that feel impossible just thinking about the whole thing.
Yeah, like starting some massive project report or maybe cleaning out a garage that's been ignored for years. The sheer size is just crushing.
Exactly that. And the source emphasizes, instead of letting the scale paralyze you, you just, you chop it into smaller bite-sized pieces. You have to redefine what starting even means.
So the goal isn't write the whole 50-page report. It's more like write just one paragraph. Or for the garage, maybe clear one small box.
That's the key shift. The source points out how this changes your brain's perception. When it's faced with clear one box, the brain goes, okay, yeah, I can handle that.
The perceived effort just shrinks.
Dramatically. And by tackling those small, manageable bits consistently, that's how you eventually conquer the big task. It just lowers that emotional barrier, that mental hurdle, significantly.
It makes the mountain feel like just a series of small, manageable hills. Okay. What other strategies did the source material suggest for tricking the brain?
Another powerful one mentioned is visualization.
Right. Using your imagination proactively. How does that work in this context?
Yes. The sources suggest that before you even start a task physically, you take a moment, close your eyes, and vividly picture yourself actually doing it. successfully completing it,
See yourself doing the actions.
achieving the outcome, feeling that positive result at the end.
So if it's like a difficult presentation you have to give, you'd imagine yourself delivering it confidently, connecting with people, feeling good about it afterwards.
That's a perfect example of the material uses. And the really critical insight here is why it works. By doing that mental rehearsal, picturing the success, you give your brain a sense of familiarity, competence even.
Like you've already done it.
Kind of, it's like experiencing the success beforehand. The sources describe it as giving your brain a warm, fuzzy feeling, or maybe the thought, oh, I've done this before, it's no biggie. And that positive mental state you create beforehand helps reduce the anxiety, the fear that often triggers the resistance in the first place.
That's fascinating. So you're basically creating a positive blueprint for your brain before the actual challenge hits. Any other techniques we should cover from the sources?
Yeah, the final main strategy we pulled is the reward technique. This one taps directly into the brain's preference for pleasure, positive reinforcement.
Okay, this sounds a bit like what? Bribing your brain.
Yeah, in a way, yes. And the source material kind of acknowledges that. Our brains are motivated by rewards, it says, like a puppy getting a treat for being good.
Okay, fair enough.
So the method is basically setting up small, intentional rewards for yourself when you complete a difficult task, or maybe hit certain milestones within a bigger one.
Like, if I finish writing this tricky email, I get to, I don't know, take a 5-minute walk outside or finish this workout, then I can listen to that podcast I like.
Exactly like that. The brain starts to build an association. Okay, I do this effortful thing and then I get something pleasant. That positive link strengthens the motivation to start and to keep going.
Makes the effort feel less like just pain.
And more like a step towards something good. Your motivation shoots up, as the source puts it.
Okay, so we've got the 5-second rule for getting started, task breakdown to make it feel less huge, visualization to prepare mentally, and rewards for motivation. Now, the sources bring all these together with a really crucial point, right? About making them stick.
Absolutely. After laying out these techniques, the material really hammers home that practice and repetition are essential. They have to be for these to work long term.
Right. They aren't just one-off magic tricks you can pull out.
Not at all. The sources compare them to tools in a toolbox. They only help if you actually pick them up and use them regularly. And your brain, it suggests, is like a muscle.
The muscle analogy.
Yeah. The more you flex it by using these techniques to push past that discomfort, the stronger it gets. It acknowledges it probably won't feel easy at first. There will be resistance. But sticking with it is how you turn these into automatic habits.
So you're essentially rewiring your brain's default no response over time through consistent use. And the material gives a really powerful example of this kind of practice scaling up, doesn't it?
It does. It mentions Steve Jobs, the co-founder of Apple. It notes that he apparently leaned on visualization quite heavily.
Really? How so?
Well, before creating these, groundbreaking products, he'd spend time picturing users interacting with them, loving the final design, all in his mind.
Wow.
And the source highlights that this wasn't just some random quirk. It was a deliberate practice, one that sparked his creativity and arguably contributed directly to things like the iPhone.
Wow. That example really drives it home, doesn't it? That these methods aren't just for like getting the dishes done or finishing boring emails. Yeah. They can be fundamental strategies that fuel really significant creative work, ambitious projects.
It really underlines the point that tackling challenging tasks, whether they're small daily things or, world-changing ambitions, it's a core part of growth, of achievement. Every single time you manage to navigate that resistance using one of these techniques, you are, as the source says, leveling up your brain's capability.
So what's the big takeaway then from this source material?
Well, what's really clear is that confronting and working through these difficult tasks, it's framed not just as something you have to do, but as something crucial for personal growth, for success.
Like exercising that mental muscle, as you said. It might be tough initially, but it builds strength over time.
Right. And these techniques we discussed, the 5-second rule, breaking tasks down, visualization, rewards, they're presented as these practical tools. Tools specifically designed to help you level up your brain, make it more resilient, more effective when faced with challenges.
But it requires that practice.
Exactly. It's about understanding your brain's natural pull towards comfort, its avoidance of effort, and then equipping yourself with these specific, repeatable strategies to, work around that default setting. And the sources are really clear. It's not a quick fix.
Like building physical muscle, you said. Consistency, practice. Those are the key
It's
ingredients.
non-negotiable.
Mhm.
And that Steve Jobs example really shows how applying these methods consistently, even something like visualization, can be foundational to hitting truly significant goals.
It really hammers home the message from the source material. You are capable of handling those challenging tasks, the ones that feel overwhelming right now. It's about applying these smart, deliberate, brain-tickling strategies, as the sources describe them, to change your approach.
Yeah, it's like learning to play the game your brain is playing, but maybe with a slightly stacked deck in your favor this time.
So thinking about that default wiring, our brain's tendency to seek comfort, avoid effort, here's something to consider. How might consistently applying these mind game strategies, these brain-tickling techniques, how might that fundamentally change the way you approach things? Not just single tough tasks, but maybe your bigger goals, your long-term aspirations. What could becoming really adept at deliberately engaging your brain with